I would like to welcome everybody tonight to the TechNet. Tonight, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the frequency spectrum. And, I think a lot of people, even hams a lot of times, been a ham for a while and may not realize just how much is on the spectrum. It is incredible, the different amount of things on the spectrum. And a lot of people would think, well, nobody's using HF anymore except us. We're the only ones left there. That's not true. There's still a lot of things going on down on HF besides just amateur radio. And so we're going to take a look at all this. We're going to go through an expanded band plan tonight. So tonight we're going to do the frequency spectrum. We're going to take a little bit of a deep dive. And I'd like to welcome Joseph, KM4OVZ, my co-host, who is basically neither one of us are well tonight. So he's kind of just making sure that I don't go off the side of the runway. All right, let's see. Radio frequency allocation deep dive is where we're going to start. And then we're going to get into some ham radio news as always. And then we're going to do topics brought by you at the end. So if you have something you need help on, you are welcome to bring it to this net. You don't have to wait for an open lines night. If it's a big topic, get with me ahead of time. We'll do the topic. And you don't have to be the one to tell us about it. I'll find somebody. But if you have something you want to bring it. If you don't have, if you have a small topic or something you just like a quick help on, at the end, there'll be an opportunity. And what's great about that is there's a lot of people in here that don't have their cameras on. We've got a number of folks in here that don't have their cameras on. I think there's 16, 17 people in here now. There'll be 30, 40 people in here later. You should take that opportunity right after the main topic to ask questions of people like Ham and John, and people that have been doing this a lot longer than we have, and they'll help you get that stuff on the air. So we're going to be doing that later on as we get towards the end. I usually do it several times, usually before and after the news. All right, spread the word about the TechNet. I need you guys to help me get the word out. We're just not propagating, if you don't mind me using that term. We're just not propagating well. I'm not getting the YouTube hits I thought I would get. I'm not getting the subscribes. I'm not getting the movement that I'm looking for online. And I figured with the time and effort that Joseph and I and several others have put into this net, and the time we've been running now, which, by the way, this net's been on the air for coming up on 9 months. Actually, I think we're over 9 months now. I think we're coming up on our 10th month. I thought that by now our audience would be more in the hundreds, and I actually thought we'd have more of a YouTube audience. So I'm a little surprised by that. I'm not necessarily disappointed. I did a paranormal research show for 4 years, did 206 episodes where we did remote broadcasts from all kinds of haunted locations around Florida. And it was an amazing thing. And we never could quite get the traction on the internet that we wanted. But that was 10 years ago. The internet's come a long way in 10 years. And this format doesn't require quite as much bandwidth and things like that to participate as that multi-screen format show did that I was putting on back then. So hopefully, now that COVID, I know everybody thinks that COVID is like the worst thing in the world, but I'm going to tell you guys something. Always look for the silver lining. There's a lot of silver linings in COVID. I know that sounds crazy. One of the things we learned in COVID is we can work at home and be just as productive. Some other things we learned in COVID is that we can have meetings on Zoom and actually learn just as much, and even more in some respects because of distraction and ADD and things like that, and proper environment and things. So we've actually come a distance with COVID. And I think one of the other things is we've learned with COVID that we don't have to meet in person to get things done, and that we are able to do amazing things by just working with each other through electronics. And we've also made people more comfortable with the online experience, the online environment, and online television. And these things are all very important to the future. My wife and I watched a lot of TV. My wife watches a lot of TV. I watch some TV. Uh, we used to watch, I don't know, so many hours, and now we realize my wife watches about 90% YouTube. She watches private broadcasters like me that are here doing a free show, or in some of their cases a lightly monetized show, to in our case here a nonprofit show that's not monetized. um, and that's the kind of shows that my wife and I watch on YouTube, and we're actually finding them to be more entertaining. Everything from people that go and see the graves of all of the famous people that have died. We're following some other guys that do wildlife, and they raise big cats that have been injured in the wild, and giraffes having babies. My God, my wife watches all kinds of YouTube videos. You wouldn't believe some of the different things, but they're interesting. They're cool. They're live. They're happening. And so YouTube is such a great medium out there. And so I want you guys to just help me get this word out, and let everybody know. Next time you're on a net, let them know that we're here, that we're putting time and effort into this. Come check us out. It may be something that helps you get on the air or helps you get something fixed. So just do me a favor, and whether it's social media, sharing the links to the show on Facebook or Twitter, for any of us that have that crap anymore. And I, trust me, I get it. I'm not doing a lot of it myself. I really need to be more engaging in social media. I just hate it. I think it's just terrible, but it's necessary. On radio nets, during comment sections, remind people about our net here. Word of mouth, swap meets, meeting, socials. Word of mouth's the best way to get the word out. Like, share, subscribe, and ring the notification bell on YouTube. If you're signed into YouTube, when you click all those things, each one of those helps our algorithm. It brings up bring us up on search results. And when that happens, we get more viewers and we get more support, and we get more people signing up for the newsletter and for the team, and to support the net. And so it's important to do all that. So, okay, I'm off the soapbox. But do that. Help us spread the word about the TechNet. All right, tonight we're going to talk about the frequency spectrum. Again, I was very surprised myself when I started deep diving this. Even in the last few days when I was preparing for this, I was kind of surprised at some of the things I found. There's just so many different things that are being used through the communication spectrum. So tonight we're going to go through the frequency spectrum and explore all the different uses and modes. We're going to venture far outside the ham radio allocations, and we're going to look at the entire spectrum. I just wanted to give you guys a quick refresher. I suck at math. I'm going to be honest with you right up front. Zeros and ones, oh my goodness. I'm not good at math, but for the purposes tonight, we need to know a little bit about how we move decimal points and things like that. So I just want to do a little refresher course for everybody out there. Frequency basics, okay? I used to get very confused. Like, I would get SDR sharp, and I would want to put in a frequency, and then I would go to my SDR or web SDR, and I'd put in a frequency, and it wouldn't work. And it'd make me so mad. It's because you got to use commas and periods based on whether they say they want it in megahertz, kilohertz, or hertz. Believe it or not, some of the servers out there want it in hertz. So if you want to listen to 154 megahertz, that's 154,000,000 enter. I know it's crazy. That's why I'm mentioning it, because you may run into this one day, if you haven't already, where it won't accept your frequency, and you just want to do what I used to do and take the keyboard and break it over the counter. And I know, because I used to do that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, all it is you've got it either wants commas, it doesn't want commas, it wants periods, it doesn't want periods. The period or the comma's in the wrong place. It's one of those things. So check your formatting. Okay, it's real simple. 1 hertz, okay, is 1 wave per second. So every time we go up from that, 150 megahertz, okay, is 150 million cycles per second. 100 kilohertz is 100,000 cycles per second, and 100 hertz would be 100 cycles per second. it's just important to understand how this works, because you're going to run into this a lot in amateur radio. And the more you get into it, the more you're going to find programs want megahertz or kilohertz or hertz. Has anyone run into that, or does anyone want to comment on this? Or have I not explained it well?
I ran into that same problem when I first started messing with WebSDR. I tried typing that thing in 500 times, and I was like, why?
Isn't it aggravating? And you're like, it's there. And what's really aggravating, I ran into one that once you type it the way they want it, it converts it back to what I was typing to begin with. That one really made me mad.
Oh, man.
So
drive you crazy.
That's why I just wanted to make sure you guys know this, because it sucks. Okay. This is really cool. The energy spectrum is split up into two parts, okay? Part of it is the radio spectrum, and part of it is the optical spectrum. Now, I thought it was interesting, and I'm not going to get into this tonight, but you can communicate optically, and I'm not talking about through glass. There's actually ways amateur radio operators can communicate with each other using a laser that is sending pulse rate. And they can communicate over miles and miles and miles using visual communication. So you're not limited to the radio spectrum, although that's where most of us reside. Now, when it comes to this, I want you guys to understand how this works. Way over here on the left, you've got 10 hertz. Okay, so that's 10 cycles basically per second. When you're down there, that's very low frequency. Really not used by much of anything down there. It's too low to be used for radio. Once we get up into this area here, 1 kilohertz, we start to get to the point where radio communications are actually possible on that frequency. And so now we're in the radio range. We go through the low frequency, medium frequency, and high frequency. This is where we do a lot here. HF is where we spend a lot of time obviously with your HF radio. And then that gets up to 10 megahertz. Now, once we get up to 50 megahertz, we get into the VHF range. And then UHF, you've got your super high and your extremely high, I believe, frequency. And then all of a sudden, the frequency is so excited, it's so fast, that it becomes light, it becomes visible. Or not necessarily visible at first, but it becomes a wavelength of light. And now we get into infrared, which is what my security cameras see at night. Infrared light, the reason it's used for security cameras is because that lower frequency actually proliferates better at night, and it seems to light up with a lot less energy, more of an area. We get up to 10 terahertz up here, and we get into the visible light spectrum. And of course, you get your rainbow there from red, which is the low end of the spectrum, all the way up to ultraviolet, which is the highest end of the spectrum. People sometimes forget that. They think that black lights and blue lights must be on the low end of the spectrum. Those are actually on the high end of the spectrum. Infrared and heat and that kind of energy is down towards the low end of the optical spectrum. And then you get into your ultraviolet light, your X-rays, your gamma rays. As this goes up, it becomes more damaging to human flesh. And then, of course, we get up here to cosmic rays that are actually 10 to the 23rd power megahertz, or 10 to the 23rd power hertz, I should say. You got to be specific with this stuff. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the energy spectrum real quick as a quick refresher? I'm not a science professor, but I love this stuff. It's so interesting. And so yeah. I hope does my passion make up for the fact that I hope I know what I'm doing?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. What were you going to say, Joseph?
I was going to say, when I first tried to explain to my mom that radio was also the same as visible light, that blew her mind. That was really cool.
Did you get what you talking about, Willis?
She was like, no. I was like, yes.
Yeah. Light and sound. That's ears and eyes. It's two different things. What are you talking about? But yeah, it's interesting how that works. That
It's
it's
interesting to think too, like if your eyes could see in the radio spectrum and you keyed up a handheld, it would just look like the antenna was a light bulb. It would just glow.
yeah, yeah.
It's kind of
I
interesting to think about
I
that.
wish that you could see it a little bit, like in Star Trek or something. That would
See a
be
little
cool.
glow.
If I could, when I transmit, if my antenna put out like a red glow and then like little beams came out, that would look so cool to my neighbors. It would remind them all the time why their TV's messed up. All right, so to go through things is a real basic. Okay, now this is for the new folks. Okay, so don't shoot me, John and Rick and Ham, but this is in Henry. This is for the new folks out there that haven't done this before. Um, this is just a basic overview of where you find stuff. That very low frequency we talked about, mostly just marine stuff. Mostly, it's surface wave, and it's used over ocean. When you get down that low, it's about all it's good for. And then you get into maritime radio navigation for your low frequency, uh, your MF. Your medium frequencies there is going to be your AM radio, your aviation radio navigation. You get up into HF, your shortwave, VHF television, FM radio, and then of course you can see you work your way up, and then finally your really high stuff uh, down below 1 centimeter wavelength is mostly radio astronomy, satellites, and communications and stuff like that. So just the basics there. Now, real quick, just to show you guys, there's a lot of different ways that waves move through, and we've done this on a different night, so I only got one slide on it, but I just want to cover it real quick. Um, Ground wave stuff, VLF, very low frequency and low frequency stuff, which, by the way, we're talking stuff that's way down, like where Marconi made his first transatlantic. You can see that there, the two arrows. Submarines use this. It's a ground wave. It works by skimming across the top of the water. Once we get up to MF, medium wave, and your high wave, your high frequency, once you get up into those, you're mostly into a skywave situation where we're needing to reflect off of sporadic E, or reflect off of the F layer in the atmosphere, or reflect off of something. It has to have help from the sky. And then, of course, when we get up higher than that, it's going to basically mostly everything's line of sight. But as we get up towards VHF and UHF, of course, line of sight is going to be your main thing. And of course, up in those bands, you can get things like troposcatter and aurora scatter, and some different kinds of tropospheric ducting, and there's a bunch of different kinds of tropospheric changes that happen in the VHF and UHF range too. So some interesting stuff there, but I just wanted to put that out there just to kind of show you where the AM bands are, where the FM band is. These are all across the whole spectrum. All right, now, real quick, just to give you a quick overview, you've got your low band. Then notice where our 6 meter, that we're going to start here with, what is that, 30 megahertz. Okay, this is basically looking, right here we get to the VHF band. There's our 6 meter. Everything that's pink on these next two slides is amateur radio. So there's our 50 meter band. Notice here we got TV. These are the old TV channels, old analog, huge, wide broadcast channels. And then your FM broadcast channels here, 88 megahertz through 108 megahertz, as you guys know from the dashboard of your truck. And then, of course, you've got your aircraft band. Aircraft is generally always an AM or amplitude modulation, so you got to remember that. If you're trying to scan aircraft stuff, you're going to need to scan it and listen for it in AM, and amplitude modulation. There's your military stuff. And then right above that, here we go, military 2 meter band, 144 to 148 megahertz. That's our probably our most used band right there because of the repeaters that we have. Some real nice repeaters in this area. And then you got military, VHF high band. And then what they mean by VHF high band, this is government, mostly government. And we're going to get into that a little more in depth. But your fire departments are on 154, 155 megahertz. And then your forestry is up on 164. So
Marine bands too.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Oh,
marine
yeah.
bands in there as well. And then you got your TV channels going up here, and then we get up a little higher. Here's our
20 band.
buck and a quarter. I got to tell you, I love the name. Whoever came up with it, kudos.
Yeah.
I love the name for the buck and a quarter net on Wednesday nights. If you guys want to check out the buck and a quarter net, it costs about $1.25. It's not that expensive.
Peter wants to do
It costs
too.
about $27.
Yeah, 27 and a quarter to join the net via Baofeng. You can see here we got military, and then we run through here different stuff, TV channels. It's amazing how much stuff is up here, all the way up to 900. Now, once we get to here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch screens here, and we're going to go to this. This is a really cool thing that I want to show you guys. The link for this is under the live tab. You can get your own copy of this. It's a PDF. You can download it, save it. Probably a good idea to have on your thumb drive that you take in emergencies, that has all your you guys know it's always a really good idea to have all the owner's manuals, all the frequency lists, all the ARRL manuals, all that stuff printed out or on a thumb drive or both. So, and this would be something I would definitely want on that thumb drive, so that when you get somewhere after a disaster, internet's down, you still have the detailed information you need here to see what's on each band. Now, I want to show you guys basically how this works. You go in here, look at this. This is an amazing graphic here, and you can see here when we're down, we're right down here. Let's see here, where are we at? What's the see? We don't get to 1 megahertz until we get down to here. I mean, we're literally, this is kilohertz. This is 14 kilohertz, 19 kilohertz. And you can see where the military or the maritime, the boats, they use these lower frequencies, radio navigation, maritime. There's not much for us to hear down there. And there's not a lot of radios that hear that low anyway. Man, this thing is so huge. Then we get down to the other side of this here. This is, and you guys break in anytime if you know anything about this stuff and you want to break in. But again, radio navigation, maritime, mobile, and aeronautical navigation. There's a lot of different things that you use, but that's all way down below 1 megahertz. We're down in the kilohertz range. All right. And then we start back over here again. This is 300 kilohertz. Again, maritime, mobile. And then here we go. Here's our radio broadcast band for amplitude modulation. And that's all between 53 and whatever. That makes sense. 535 kilohertz to 1600 kilohertz. Yeah, that's correct. That's your that's your broadcast your broadcast amplitude modulation band. That's your old AM radio. And you can today with your SDR Sharp, you can tune into that band right there, switch it to AM, and you can still hear AM radio stations. They're still out there. And just like anything else, if you do it like late at night, you'll hear stations that are really far away. Our AM stations that we have are still required to turn down to just a fraction of the power at night. And I'm sure that's something John and some of the guys that have been in broadcast radio have dealt with. We run our blowtorch out there at 1200 AM. I guess it's still going out there. We have a Latino channel on it. And it's boiling out 100,000 watts or some crap on AM. But at night, we have to turn it down to 10,000 watts. Okay, and then once we get down past AM, we get into this band. What is that? Amateur radio there. It's the wrong color.
It's 160 meters.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. So that's 160 meters. That's 1.8 megahertz to 1.9 megahertz. Remember how I told you guys the little refresher earlier, and I've already screwed it up twice. So anyway, but yeah, that's 1.8 megahertz and to 1.9 megahertz, or that would also can be said 1800 kilohertz to 1900 kilohertz. So either way, but that is our amateur band right there for 160 meters. And then you go on up here. This is all mobile, maritime mobile, pretty much all the basic stuff there. Then we get down here. These are all fixed stations, land mobile stations. A lot of this is commercial. I don't know what they use a lot of this stuff for, but then we get into broadcast television. Land mobile is just two-way radio systems. And then
At
broadcast
49 megahertz. Oh yeah, like wait, is it? Hold on, this is 46 megahertz, right? 46.6 megahertz.
Yeah, that would be 40. Yeah, 47.
Yeah, that's that
wait a
area
minute.
right there. Is that kilohertz?
No,
it's megahertz.
It's megahertz. Okay,
That's
that
megahertz.
okay. That 49 megahertz and kilohertz there.
Yeah, it is.
That is what a lot of radio control toys use, as well as really cheap toy walkie-talkies will use 49 megahertz. Same for 27 megahertz. There's a lot of stuff down there. There's a certain section. So that like fixed mobile thing right there, that's used by toys an awful lot.
You know, back in the day, back in when I was a kid, like I'm talking in the like right around 1980-ish, I used to buy these FM headphones, and they were hooked to a box, and you could buy as many of them as you wanted. They were about 40 or 50 bucks a piece. It was expensive, but they worked about a mile away. They were the best two-way radios I ever had when I was a kid, and they worked on 49.9 megahertz. I can still remember that frequency. So that puts it in this little sliver right here. That's interesting, though. I just, it's interesting that on here it doesn't show that as for that, but whatever. They also used to sell a lot of toys, and there was another band here in the 39, right around there. And you know, something else that's interesting is I'll tell you another quick story. There was when I was a firefighter, a couple of guys moved down here named Casey and Larry. They moved down from Loveland, Ohio, and the Loveland Township, Ohio Fire Department had a radio system on 39 megahertz. And back then they were starting to switch over to VHF, but they were still simulcasting all their alerts on 39 megahertz and all their traffic, because the guys still had all their plectrons, their alert systems, if you will, on 39.9 megahertz, 39.8 or 39.9. It was one or the other. And they brought that plectron down because one of them had bought their own, and it was a tube plectron. It was probably, you know, pretty good size. And they brought that thing down, and they put that plectron in the day room, sitting on the dining room table because it was up against the wall unless we pulled it out. And we took a wire and we went out and we wrapped it around the tower that went up 50 feet out behind the station. We turned it on, and it sat there. It sat there for about 4 days. And it went off at one morning at 7:30 in the morning. It went off. Loveland, engine 22, engine 24, truck 9, structure fire. And I'm like, oh my God, we're getting a call for Loveland Township Fire Department here in our day room in Fort Myers, Florida. I thought that was really cool. And of course, it was early morning, 39 megahertz. And it just happened to be rolling this way. And we left that in there for over a year. And about once or twice a week, we would get toned out for the Loveland Fire Department. And we used to think that was just the coolest thing in the world. So there's my story for the night on that. All right. Anybody have anything up to now?
A similar story when I was a kid, well, and even young adult, I did a lot of scanner programming for people, and the Indiana State Police were on 42.42 and 42.26.
Mm-hmm.
And when things would get running, you could hear a police car sometimes up from the other side of the state on those frequenting was right.
Yeah. One more quickie. I had a friend that was a trooper, and he introduced me to the old dispatcher that had worked here in Fort Myers for 40 years before he retired. Really neat guy, and being that I have some dispatch experience in my past too, I wanted to meet the guy. And so I met him. He told me this story about this back when they were on low band. They used to call, they called it low band. I don't know what frequency. I don't know, 30, 40 megahertz, whatever.
Technically, it's VHF low.
Yeah, something like that. And they had the big whip antennas, 45-incher whip antennas on the back, and they were hooked into the side of the trunk. Anyway, this trooper backed in behind this road sign to run radar one night. He thought it'd be a cool spot, so he backed in. He's sitting there, and he's listening to the Fort Myers dispatcher. Problem is, this guy was in he was up on the interstate north of what's it up there, left to Tallahassee, way out there. That I don't know. It's one of the towns almost to the Alabama line. And he's sitting up there. Yeah, something like that. He's sitting up there on I-10, and he backs in, and he hears the Fort Myers dispatcher. So he picks up the radio. He says, 1239 Fort Myers. And she says, 1239. She comes back, 1239. You're not one of my guys. Where are you at? And he says, you won't believe it, but I'm up in wherever, up in the Panhandle, and I can hear you. And so they have a conversation that none of the other troopers in Fort Myers can hear half of, and none of the other troopers up in the Panhandle can hear the other half of. And they sit there and have a conversation. Well, this becomes a thing. I don't know if it's because of a broadcast tower nearby or something, or just the swirl of the energy. But every time he would back in behind that sign, he could pick it up, and he could not call Tallahassee, but he could key it up and he could talk to Fort Myers. And he would always,
the sign was probably reflecting the.
Yeah, there was some dynamic there. If he parked just right, he'd pick it up and he'd go 1239 Fort Myers, and she'd go, hey, how you doing up there tonight? And they would have this conversation, and it got to the point where the troopers were used to the dispatcher talking to this mysterious trooper up in the Panhandle a couple times a week at 3 o'clock in the morning. So
yeah, VHLO will do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was like
that.
It was a constant path that was there every day. So it wasn't atmospherics. I don't know. I always thought that was such a neat story. All right. Anybody have any more questions on the expanded plan here? I want to show you guys basically just what it is and how it works. I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but I do want to just show you real quick where. Why is this not working? I want to show you real quick where the amateur radio stuff is. You get right here into, oh crap, whatever. Guys, I got to tell you, this is so in depth that it makes it really hard to use. But you can see where the amateur bands are etched out here. That's actually up in the microwave, but whatever. All right, so anyway, this is a great tool that I suggest each of you check out on your own, and we'll just leave it at that. Does anybody have any questions about the frequency allocation chart?
What's the copyright date on that at the bottom left?
16, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, if there's a newer one, post a link up on that page for me. But that's the one I got right there.
No, I think that's the latest one.
Is it? Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to switch back over to here. I want to show you guys, there is some really cool stuff that you can pick up with your SDR Sharp, your scanner, whatever. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. Here is some things that you can pick up with your scanner right now, tonight, and or maybe tomorrow. But there's some real cool stuff. Both Pagefield and Southwest Regional have frequencies here that are listed. I didn't list every single one, like Pagefield has 5 more, but they're such a slow airport. That's the only one you're probably going to hear anything on. The Southwest Regional is a lot busier, so you might hear traffic on a bunch of those. Remember, if you want to listen on these channels, you cannot listen with an FM radio. Like your Baofeng, believe it or not, some of the Baofengs will tune to these frequencies. Sounds great, right? it won't work. You won't hear nothing because they're FM and this is AM. So it will work if you've got a shack in the box, or a radio that will tune to these bands and these frequencies that does AM. It will work. A lot of rigs, a lot of HF rigs, you can dial up these frequencies, put it in AM, and listen to aircraft on your HF rig. Your
A lot of
SDR
your
Sharp will
mobile
do it.
FM rigs will do it too.
Oh, they'll receive an AM.
Yes, they'll receive an AM.
That's
I've
cool.
got one. Yeah. Some of the ICOMs can be tuned into the AM band. Of course, it'll go into AM mode. So you can
That's
listen
cool.
to aircraft on it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Joseph.
The FT 8900 is another radio that can do AM, and I do listen to the Fort Myers approach and departure a lot using the AM side because it will tune down to that.
There you go. So that's something you can listen to right there. And if you miss these frequencies, all you need to do, radio reference or broadcastify both. You can just go to Google and type Lee County, Florida radio frequencies, and then pull up either broadcastify or just one of the websites you've heard before, and you'll get the entire list. They're all right there. You can also go back to YouTube and just go back in this show until you see this screen. All right, here's some other ones you can do. And every county has this. If you're in Charlotte County, your county has this same stuff. This just shows you some stuff you can do. Fire rescue is still simulcasting on the 154-430, and they are still on the 154-325. Both of those, I believe, are transmitting a 107.2. I think all three of those are a 107.2 PL. I don't know why that third one's listed as carrier, but it used to always be a 107.2. Anyway, those are like the main channels, right? Those top three channels there for fire rescue. They're not communicating on these channels. What they're doing is they're simulcasting the trunked system onto these channels. So you'll still hear dispatches on there. You'll still hear traffic on there. So if you're just looking for something to listen to, while you're hanging out or whatever, you will hear traffic on these quite a bit. The 430 and the 325 are both active. I don't know exactly what they've got. This all kind of mixed up a little bit here, but the 430 and the 325 are both still active. Lee mosquito control. I do not know if that's still active. I haven't tested it. I do know that the Division of Forestry is still actively using this frequency spectrum. And you'll notice these frequencies, they have a 32 channel band plan. Okay. I only put the ones in here that you're going to hear traffic on in Lee County and the surrounding counties. Caloosahatchee base, that's the channel you're going to hear. Whoops, what happened? That's the channel you're going to hear a lot on. But the most is this one here, 159-450. That's the one you want for the most traffic there. During brush fires, you'll hear a lot of traffic on here with the tractors responding to the brush fires. And the school buses are all there if you want to hear some boring crap about some bad kids.
Oh, I discovered that school bus thing by accident one time.
Yeah, they're still, believe it or not, on the U. I figured they'd be up on trunk radio by now, but they don't spend a lot of money on it.
No, they don't got no budget.
Yeah, whatever.
So if they have a school bus riot, you'll hear it.
There you go. All right, and here's just some odds and ends. Now, listen, there's a bunch of Marine band frequencies, and technically the whole spectrum for Marine band still in use. But that being said, this is the only thing you're really going to hear a lot of traffic on. If you want more of the frequencies, just look it up and find them. They're right there anywhere online. There's a million sources of them. But that's the one right there. If you just want to program one on your scanner, that's the International Distress Channel, 156-800. And then utilities, those two, the co-op, that's the Lee County Electric Cooperative, which, by the way, sponsors, I believe, two of our repeaters up here, or at least they house them. But they have their own repeater system for their trucks when they're out running trouble and checking lines and stuff. And you can hear that. I do not know if that Florida City Water but I included it because that's the thing. I think that's one of the things Rick might have been talking about. This is another one of those APRS systems that probably uses a Yagi and sends information back to a central location. So might be something to check out. Might be something to check out because I bet you that would never go trunk. That's something they would keep on UHF, just because of the dynamics of it. So I that might be something where we might hear packets being sent on that channel. I don't know. I'm going to check it out one day once there's 90 hours in a day. Southwest Utility Systems, Cape Coral Water and Sewer. I'm sure those are exciting. You definitely want those in your scanner. Cape Coral Water and Sewer, very exciting stuff. I would definitely recommend those. And then Florida Cablevision. Who knows what that is? I never know Florida Cable. I've never heard of it. But anyway, and there's the Edison Mall over there, South Seas Plantation. I don't know how many of these are still in use. I just thought I'd throw them in here. That's what we do in amateur radio. We explore. And so there's a lot to explore. The AAA Auto Club is actually their wreckers that are out running wrecker calls. But I heard a while back that they were going to a digital system. So there might not be any traffic on that anymore. But they actually have nationwide frequency rights on that strange, the 452 megahertz. And they use those radios nationwide, those frequencies. There's actually a group of, I think, 8 or 10 frequencies, and they just hop them up the state so that they put some separation between them. And there's a few more. Seminole Gulf Railroad, they were using that a couple years ago, but I don't know if they're still using that. And Lee County Sports Complex, if you want to hear about drunk people getting kicked out of a stadium. All right, so there you go. There's all the cool things you can listen to around Lee County. It's such an exciting place. We don't burn down a lot of targets or have a lot of riots here. So,
Ian,
yeah, go ahead.
I go back to that screen before. I just want to point out that those, like the Gulf Coast Village one, that's really just a local repeater for the handhelds in the building.
Right.
So those are little bitty systems just for
exactly
the South Seas Plantation. You know, that's for people running around the property. It doesn't go very far. Just little local repeater systems.
Yeah, and like I said, just for exploring purposes. If you've built a big Yagi and you want to put it to a little bit of a challenge, see if you can pick up that South Seas little repeater they got sitting at 15 feet out there on the island. That'd be a little challenge for you. But as I've been kind of making fun of, you're not going to hear anything fun on these channels, except they need to change the sheets in room 217. All right. How can you listen? Well, this is just a quickie here. Your HF rig, mini HF rigs will listen to all kinds of frequencies. My Shack in a Box will dial up to a gigabyte. Now, I don't know if it actually receives on all those frequencies, but it acts like it wants to. And, that's part of it. Scanners, old scanners, believe it or not, you can find old scanners just laying around, and they do pretty good depending on what you want to pick up. But just remember, most old scanners only pick up FM or frequency modulation, so they're not going to work with aircraft and stuff. But some of the newer ones will know it's an aircraft frequency and will actually listen in AM. SDR, software-defined radio dongles, probably the best and cheapest way to explore the spectrum at this point. As long as you turn your gain up, right, Joseph?
Yeah.
I bought one, didn't realize you had to turn the gain up, thought it was a piece of crap, thought it was a fake, and I threw it in my parts box, and it sat there for 6 months till Joseph goes, "You did turn that little gain thing up, right?"
Little gain thingy.
Now I've bought a second one. I'm thinking about buying a third one. So
There's turn the gain up on those too.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I was so aggravated because it is a wonderful little piece of equipment. Not great on the really low band, like on HF. It's not great, but you can buy a piece of equipment to go with it that makes it great on HF. Okay. So, SDR Sharp, many of you that have the, dongles, but you don't even need a dongle to use SDR Sharp. You can actually go into SDR Sharp and tell it that you want to go look at the shared dongles that are out there, and you can actually listen through someone else's shared dongle. And if you want to know how to do that, go back to our previous show 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Joseph explained it all to you back then. It's right there on their YouTube channel. WebSDR, another great place to go and check out the spectrum. Although I will tell you, WebSDR a lot of times will restrict you to amateur radio allocations or just around the area. So you won't be able to like explore the law enforcement channels in Utah, for instance, on WebSDR. But you probably can on the SDR Sharp shared dongle thing. And like I said, we went through that. Joseph, am I explaining that well?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, I was making sure.
The spy server network.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know the name of it. The spy server network through SDR Sharp allows you to pick up mostly all the spectrum, where my SDR, WebSDR, does not.